What if I told you one of the most important discoveries about early human history didn't come from a pyramid or a cave, but from a muddy pond in Florida? In 1984, construction workers were clearing land in central Florida when something stopped them cold. Buried in the dark water was a human skull, not broken, not scattered, intact. At first, it looked like a crime scene, but it wasn't. What they had just uncovered would go on to rewrite everything we thought we knew about ancient America, because this wasn't one body, it was a hidden cemetery, 8,000 years old. And somehow, impossibly, the people inside it hadn't vanished with time. Their bodies were still there, their brains were still there, and deep inside those brains, something scientists never expected to find: DNA. Real, readable DNA from one of the oldest human communities ever discovered in North America. This place would later be called the Windover Bog, and what it revealed was far more than just bones in the ground. It was a complete snapshot of a forgotten society, one that was far more advanced, emotional, and complex than anyone had imagined. The discovery started with a man named Steve Vanderjack. He was operating heavy machinery, digging through what looked like an ordinary swamp. Nothing about it stood out until his machine pulled up something round, dark, smooth. He picked it up, thinking it might be a rock. Then he turned it over and realized it was staring back at him, a human skull. Police were called immediately, but something didn't add up. The bone wasn't fresh. It was deeply stained, almost black, like it had been underwater for a very long time. This wasn't a recent death. This was something ancient. So instead of detectives, they called an archaeologist. When researchers arrived, they didn't expect much, just another routine site, but within minutes, that changed. More bones started appearing along the edges of the pond, then more skulls, then entire skeletons. And the deeper they looked, the more it became clear this wasn't random. This was intentional, a burial ground. When dating tests came back, the results shocked everyone. These remains were between 7,000 and 8,000 years old, long before the pyramids, long before Stonehenge, long before recorded history in most parts of the world. But here's where it gets strange. Bodies that old aren't supposed to exist anymore. In normal conditions, bone breaks down completely over time, especially in heat and moisture like Florida. There should have been nothing left, but instead, these bodies looked recent. The reason came down to something no one had planned: the pond itself. It was a peat bog, a thick oxygen-poor environment that slows decay almost to a halt. The bodies had been buried quickly, sealed away from bacteria, and preserved in a kind of natural time capsule. But Windover had something even rarer. Unlike most bogs, it wasn't highly acidic, which meant it didn't just preserve soft tissue. It preserved everything: bones, organs, even the brain. And that's when the discovery went from incredible to unbelievable. Some of the skulls felt unusually heavy. When scientists looked inside, they found a dense material where the brain should have been. At first, they assumed it was just mud or plant matter that had seeped in over time, but scans told a different story. It wasn't debris, it was actual human brain tissue, shrunken, compressed, but still structurally intact. In total, researchers recovered 91 ancient brains. Think about that for a second. These were the very organs where thoughts, memories, emotions once existed, preserved for 8,000 years. And if the structure was still there, maybe something else was too: DNA. At the time, extracting DNA from something this old, especially in a human environment, was considered nearly impossible, but they tried anyway. And against all odds, it worked.
They didn't just find fragments. They found real, identifiable human DNA, and it told a powerful story. These people weren't some unknown, vanished race. They were the direct ancestors of modern Native Americans. Same genetic markers, same physical traits: dark hair, dark eyes, dark skin. This wasn't a lost civilization. It was a living lineage, a connection that had never been broken. But the surprises didn't stop there. As scientists studied the bodies, a picture of their lives began to form, and it didn't match the typical image of primitive humans. These people were strong, healthy, and well-fed. Some of the men were nearly 6 feet tall. Their bones showed no signs of starvation or constant struggle. This wasn't a group barely surviving. They were thriving. And they weren't just surviving physically, they were emotionally complex too. One skeleton stood out: a teenage boy with severe spinal deformities that would have left him unable to walk. In a nomadic society, someone like that wouldn't be expected to survive long, but he did, for years, which means his community carried him, cared for him, protected him, not because they had to, but because they chose to. That level of care, that level of compassion is something we associate with modern societies, but it was already there 8,000 years ago. Then came another discovery that challenged everything again. Textiles, fabric, woven cloth wrapped around the bodies. At that time, experts believed weaving didn't exist this far back in North America, but the evidence was right there. Delicate, carefully made fabric, some worn during life, others created specifically for burial. Even infants were buried in brand new cloth. That's not survival behavior, that's ritual, that's grief, that's love. And then, buried among all of this was a darker story. One man, in his physical prime, was found with a weapon lodged deep in his pelvis, but that wasn't what killed him. The real clue was what was missing: his skull and the top vertebrae of his spine. He had been decapitated, not in battle, not from a distant attack, but up close, personal. This wasn't war, this was something else. Conflict, anger, maybe revenge. A reminder that even in a society capable of deep compassion, violence still existed, because that's part of being human too. But perhaps the most astonishing discovery came from the DNA itself. When scientists compared genetic samples across the site, they noticed something unusual. The sequences were almost identical over hundreds of years, over generations. This wasn't a random group of people. This was a single extended family returning to the same place again and again for over 1,000 years to bury their dead. Think about that. For over a millennium, they came back to this exact spot, not because they lived there. They didn't. Evidence shows they traveled across the region, but this place mattered. It meant something. It was sacred, a fixed point in a moving world, a place where the living stayed connected to the dead. And that might be the most powerful part of this entire discovery, because when you strip everything else away, the science, the data, the timelines, you're left with something familiar. These weren't primitive people. They were us. They cared for each other. They honored their dead. They created. They believed. They fought. They loved. The only difference is that it took 8,000 years and a hidden pond for us to finally see it.